Her bullies put out a burning cigarette on her forehead. 14-year-old Rena Verk lived in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. She desperately wanted to fit in, but she was often bullied for her weight. She struggled with self-esteem and felt isolated from her peers. Rena wanted acceptance, and because of this, she started hanging out with a rougher crowd of teenagers, hoping that they would see her as one of them. November 14th of 1997, Rena received what seemed to be like the opportunity she had been waiting for. She was invited to meet with a group of teenagers near Shoreline Community Middle School, and to Rena, it finally felt like she was being accepted. But unfortunately, it was a trap. That night, dozens of teenagers gathered around the Craig Flower Bridge, and at first, everyone was just hanging out, talking, but then tensions quickly grew. Rumors had been spreading about Rena, and several girls from that group wanted to confront her about it. One of the girls put out a cigarette on Rena's face, and this would start everything. A group of teenagers immediately surrounded her. They punched her, kicked her, dragged her by her hair, and beat her, while others were just watching everything. The attack became so severe that those who participated became known as the Shoreline Six. Eventually, the group dispersed and left Rena alone underneath the bridge. Somehow, she managed to get back on her feet. She was bruised, bleeding, and terrified. She's starting to walk away thinking that everything's over now, but she was wrong. As Rena is crossing that bridge, she is spotted by two members of that group, 16-year-old Warren Golotsky and 15-year-old Lauren Ellis, and they plan a second attack. They beat her so badly that she lost consciousness, her head was slammed against a tree, and she was stomped on. And instead of getting help, they dragged her body to the edge of the gorge waterway. While Rena lay helpless, they forced her face into the water and held her there until she drowned, and afterwards, they just walked away. For 8 days, Rena's body remained hidden in that water. Her family reported her as missing, but since she had run away before, authorities just considered her as another runaway teenager. Eventually, witnesses came forward and divers searched the area. On November 22nd, Rena's body was discovered, and this case shocked Canada. Those 6 teenagers who were involved in the first beating were convicted of assault. Warren was convicted of second-degree murder in 1999, but he was granted full parole in 2010. As for Kelly, she was also convicted of second-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison. She has now changed her name to Carrie Marie Sim and remains incarcerated. Rena was not looking for a fight that night. She was simply just looking for friends.
She adopted her just to torture and unalive her. 5-year-old Logan Marr and her infant sister were taken into Sally Schofield's home as foster children. Sally removed the tray and comfortable padding from Logan's high chair, leaving her to sit on a hard plastic frame. Sally used rolls of duct tape to bind Logan's chest, wrists, and ankles to the high chair. Then Sally would leave Logan strapped to the high chair inside the cold, dark, unfinished basement for hours at a time. Sally used darkness as a psychological weapon to torture and terrify Logan. Logan was also intentionally separated from her infant sister and the rest of the family. Logan was not allowed to play with any toys or even talk to the family. Logan was forced to eat all of her meals alone in the basement while the rest of the family ate together upstairs. Sally was a former child welfare supervisor, so she knew exactly what to say to cover everything up every time a child services worker came around. Whenever Logan would complain to the social worker, Sally would say that all of Logan's wounds were self-inflicted, which doesn't even sound believable to me, but the social workers bought it. Logan passed away from asphyxiation due to being left in the basement with duct tape over her mouth. Sally was only sentenced to 20 years in prison and was actually released in 2017 after only serving a portion of her sentence. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that social services actually bought Sally's lame excuses. Then Sally unalived Logan, and now she's just free and out in the world to do whatever she wants. Am I hearing that correctly? Other than that, what do you guys think about this case?
They ate pieces of their wallboard to survive. On October 19th of 2003, a man called 911 after spotting what he thought was a child digging through garbage cans looking for food in the middle of the night. When police arrived, they were horrified. They thought this child was around 7 years old, but it was actually 19-year-old Bruce Jackson, and he only weighed 45 pounds. Officers followed him back to his home, and that's when they discovered that his adoptive brothers were in the same terrible condition. 14-year-old Trayshawn weighed only 40 pounds, 10-year-old Terrell weighed only 28 pounds, and the youngest was 9-year-old Michael, and he weighed 23 pounds and was forced to wear baby clothes because that's all that fit him. Inside of the home, investigators found a lock on the refrigerator, and there was an alarm on the kitchen door. Those boys later revealed that they were only given raw oatmeal, pancake batter, or baby food. One boy even revealed that he got so hungry that he would chew on the windowsill and he would eat pieces of plaster from the wall. And what made this case even more disturbing was that Raymond and Vanessa Jackson appeared to be loving adoptive parents. They went to church often and they were always praised about being adoptive parents. But according to those boys, everything changed once the adoption was finalized because the social workers stopped making regular visits. Those children were pulled from school once Trayshawn tried to tell a teacher that he was starving. Because of this, they were isolated from the outside world and were forced to teach themselves. If visitors were to come by the house, those boys were hidden upstairs, and once them and the family would go to church, they were forced to wear multiple sweaters so they could look healthier than they really were. Vanessa and Raymond were charged with multiple counts of child abuse and neglect, but Raymond passed away before the case went to trial. As for Vanessa, she eventually accepted a plea deal and she was sentenced to 7 years in prison, but only served up to 1 year. Thankfully, all 4 boys survived and Bruce gained 100 pounds, and he did go his own way since he was now an adult. As for those 3 other boys, they were adopted by a loving family who helped them heal from their years of abuse. To this day, Trayshawn states that if Bruce didn't go out looking for food that night, they probably wouldn't have been alive.
A woman tells her friends that she was drugged, held captive for several days, and assaulted by multiple men in a tiny cult-like mountain town in Colorado. Less than 2 weeks later, she vanished without a trace. And years later, witnesses would come forward claiming they saw a human-sized bundle wrapped in bed sheets and duct tape outside one of the suspect's houses the night she disappeared. 29-year-old Crystal Ann Reisinger moved to Crestone, Colorado, searching for peace and spirituality. Instead, she ended up surrounded by drugs, rumors, and men the locals were already terrified of. Before she disappeared, Crystal told her friend that she believed she'd been assaulted by multiple men at a party. She specifically named 2 of them, Catfish John and Dreddy Brian. Then she started talking about confronting them, but then she vanished into thin air. What makes this case so eerie is everything she left behind. All of her usual things in her day-to-day life that she loved. Her phone, her clothes, a fridge freshly stocked with all of her favorite things. Almond milk, veggie burgers, and organic vegetables. She had brand new shampoo sitting in the shower. It looked like she had every intention of coming back home. But then the rumor started. Some people claim they saw her at a full moon drum circle deep in the mountains. Others believe that story was completely made up to throw off the investigation. And here we are 10 years later, and somehow no one has ever been charged. I just broke this case down in depth with Sarah Turney on our podcast called The Final Hours. So if you want to hear the full story and all of the infuriating details, you can listen to today's episode wherever you get your podcasts. Let me know how you guys think we're doing and what your thoughts are on this case.
You're telling me the man who tours the country with the Annabelle doll was just found dead in his hotel room with no illness, no warning, no explanation, and you're telling me that it's still a good idea to keep traveling with her? Okay. His name was Dan Rivera. He was 54 and he was the lead investigator for the New England Society for Psychic Research. Yes, that society. The one that Ed and Lorraine Warren founded. The one that's been dealing with haunted cases since the 70s. The same couple who claimed that the Raggedy Ann doll became possessed after 2 roommates claimed that it started moving on its own, leaving handwritten notes and acting like it was alive. The Warrens brought the doll to a psychic and they're like, this is not a ghost, it's a demon. Where's my holy Bible? And the Warrens are like, say less. They take the doll, put it behind glass, bless the case, and then slap a warning sign on it that literally says, positively do not open. And that's where Annabelle stayed for decades, locked away in the Warrens Occult Museum because even touching her was considered dangerous. But fast forward to now, and Dan has been the primary caretaker. He's been the one bringing Annabelle across the country on this tour they called Devils on the Run. And this weekend, he shows up for this event totally fine, but then a few hours later, he's found unresponsive in his hotel room. Firefighters rush in, paramedics perform perform CPR. They try to revive him, but Dan does not make it, and just like that, he's gone. There was no public cause of death, no explanation, but then the organization released a statement confirming that it happened while on tour with the Annabelle doll. And not to be creepy or anything, but people have been warning about this for decades, that this doll should never leave the case, that moving her is dangerous, that if she's not sealed and blessed regularly, bad things will happen. And now the one person who knew all the protocols, who dedicated his life to protecting people from the energy around her, is suddenly dead.
A 25-year-old grad student walked onto campus and was super excited about his very first day treating a patient. Just weeks later, his naked and badly decomposed body was pulled from a river near a former sundown town, while his missing clothes, phone, and wallet kept mysteriously turning up in completely different locations, and most of that evidence wasn't even found by police. Jelani Day was a speech pathologist graduate student at Illinois State University. He was smart, ambitious, close with his family, and he was getting ready to donate stem cells to save his father's life. He was all around an amazing person. The morning he disappeared, he dressed really professionally for his very first clinical appointment. He worked on a patient's chart, grabbed Starbucks, left campus, and was never seen alive again. Then the case spiraled into something deeply disturbing. His car was discovered abandoned near the woods in Peru, Illinois, a former sundown town with a dark racial history, and the license plates had been removed. His wallet, clothes, and phone were all eventually found scattered across different areas over the following weeks. Meanwhile, his family says the investigation was severely mishandled from the very start. Police delayed taking this case seriously. The FBI refused to take over, and Jelani's mom repeatedly learned major updates over Facebook instead of investigators. Then came the autopsy ruling, drowning, even though Jelani was known to be a strong swimmer. I just broke this case down in depth with Sarah Turney on her podcast called The Final Hours. So if you want to hear the full story and all of the infuriating details, you can listen to today's episode wherever you get your podcasts.
How is the news not reporting this? You're trying to tell me that all three sisters just happened to go for a swim in the middle of the night and they all ended up dead. And a very similar thing happened to their mum years ago. It was the 13th of May near Black Rock Car Park in Brighton. All of a sudden, this frantic call came into police around 5:45 a.m. and the caller was like, "I think I can see a body in the water." So the emergency services got the RNLI involved and they all helped the officers bring a woman's body back to the shore. Now, tragically, she was declared dead at the scene, and this woman was 36-year-old Jane Adatoro. Now, that would be tragic and mysterious enough, right? One person dying in the water. How about three? They were like, wait a second, this woman's two sisters are also dead in the water too. Now, these girls were absolute angels, such lovely, kind women. Jane, along with her sister Christina Walters, just 32, and Rebecca Walters, just 31. Police announced that this had been like a terrible tragedy, right? Which I think we can all agree with. But then people started being like, hang on, why would they be in the water at all? Like, would they have even gone in of their own accord? And these were gorgeous black girls, and at first I'm like, well, in this photo their hair appears to be some kind of like weave or something. I'm no expert. I do have black girlfriends who have weaves. They're not the type of hairstyle that you would voluntarily get wet. Like, it's a pain in the ass to have them wet. Some like glue-in types especially are just problematic in the water. But then people started saying this isn't a real photo of these girls. It was like AI generated because they didn't actually have an up-to-date photo of all three of them together. It's all super weird. Now, the police are apparently now looking into how the women even ended up in the water in the first place. They've opened an inquest, but wait until you hear what happened to their mum. Back in 2010, their mum, Janice, was just 43 when she totally vanished without a trace. She had just completely disappeared from her home. She had no belongings with her, no medication. It was very suspicious. And a month later, her body was found deceased in a lake. Emergency services pulled her out of Brookvale Lake in Birmingham, and the coroner said there was no evidence of any injury to her. She had died from drowning, but there was no evidence that she had deliberately taken her own life. But there were also no suspicious circumstances. I have no idea what happened there. Like, that's so strange. Obviously, the girls were totally devastated and they ended up having to move to live with their dad full-time in Uxbridge. And I can't even imagine how he feels now. Their stepmom has been saying that there's just no way all three of these girls would go in the water of their own accord, and I am inclined to agree with her. It all just feels so odd. Police have said that they are looking at a number of lines of inquiry, which include understanding exactly who Jane, Christina, and and Rebecca were. They said this will help us build a picture of how and why they came to be at the beach that morning. I don't know, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. This all just sounds really suspicious to me.
She was found completely chopped in half and fully drained of her blood. Her murder is now one of the world's most infamous unsolved cases. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the murder of Elizabeth Short, the case of the Black Dahlia. Elizabeth was born in Massachusetts in July of 1924, her parents being Cleo and Phoebe Short. She would be raised by her single mother after Cleo actually tried to fake his own death in order to go and start a new life. He would eventually move to California. Elizabeth, who was known as Beth by her friends, was described as a beautiful, lovely young woman who had the most piercing green blue eyes. She could easily make friends wherever she went. She was friendly, she was chatty, she was funny. She was a free spirit and had big dreams. One of her ex-roommates would describe her saying, quote, "She was drawn to Hollywood like a moth to a flame. Beth would spend hours watching movies, convinced that someday she'd be up on that silver screen." When she turned 18, she decided that she was going to try and follow those dreams, and so she moved from Massachusetts, leaving Phoebe behind to go and move in with her father Cleo in California, where she thought there would be more acting opportunities. It didn't take long for Cleo to essentially kick his daughter out though, leaving Elizabeth to fend for herself. She would find work within an army base where she kind of floated between working in the shop and in the canteen. She would have to do a little bit of couch surfing, staying with friends for periods of time, and also staying in cheap hotels. She would eventually end up in Santa Barbara, and while here she would be arrested for the very first time for underage drinking. She was 19 at the time. A couple of years later, Elizabeth ended up in Long Beach, and that is where she would meet Dorothy French. Dorothy worked within a movie theatre, and one evening at the end of our shift, she saw a homeless Elizabeth sleeping in the main area of the theatre. Feeling sorry for her and wanting to do something to help, she offered Elizabeth to come and stay with her and her mum for the night. She would end up staying with the family for a couple of weeks up until Dorothy's mother asked her to leave in early January of 1947. She would later detail this to the police, saying, quote, "Beth was nice enough, but she didn't help out. She just stayed around the house, slept, and went out at night. I finally told her she'd have to leave if she wasn't going to get a job." And just days later, after watching Elizabeth leave, she would be dead, murdered in the most horrific way. Shortly before 11 a.m. on the 15th of January 1947, a woman is out walking with her child when she notices something lay in a patch of grass beside a busy road. Initially, this woman thought that what she was looking at was a very pale mannequin, but it wasn't. It was the murdered and mutilated body of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short. She had been completely cut in half from just below the belly button, and the killer had sort of posed Elizabeth's remains. He had left a good chunk of gap between the top and bottom part of her body so that anyone could immediately see that she had been cut in half. Her arms were placed above her head and her legs were posed in an open position. One of her breasts had been cut off, and on 3 inches on each side of her mouth were wounds resembling a Joker's smile. She had slashing wounds across her head, torso and pubic bone. It was determined that at some point she had been strangled with a ligature that was due to markings that were found on her neck. Similar markings were found on her wrists and her ankles, which led the investigators to believe that she was restrained, maybe with a rope, as her killer sadistically tortured and then murdered her. Despite the severity of these wounds and the fact that she had been completely cut in half, there was not a single drop of blood found at the crime scene where she was discovered or within Elizabeth's body. She had been completely drained of all of her blood. Police would soon identify the woman as Elizabeth Short. They were able to do this from her fingerprints. She gave her fingerprints over when she worked at the army camp and also when she was arrested in Santa Barbara. Heartbreakingly, it would be the press that delivered the devastating news to Phoebe Short, and they did not do this in any sort of compassionate way or from a place of care. Knowing who this woman was that had been murdered, they wanted to get information on her, so they rang Phoebe and told her that Elizabeth had won a beauty contest in order to get more information about her. After Phoebe had given over this information, praising her daughter, feeling so happy and proud, That is when the journalist told her that she hadn't actually won a beauty contest. She had been sadistically tortured and murdered. Police would investigate several different leads and suspects, and they really try to track down a person who sent letters claiming to be the killer, dubbing themselves the Black Dahlia Avenger, and they actually put stock in this person. They had lots of people falsely confessing, but this person that was sending the letters, they thought could have had something to do with the murder. That is because when they were posting the letters, they also posted some of Elizabeth's personal items. So this included photos, her address book, which she never went anywhere without. Also from within the address book, some of the pages were ripped out. Another item that they sent was Elizabeth's birth certificate. All things that they wouldn't have had if they hadn't been in contact with Elizabeth. And also things that she was unlikely to leave with someone else. Despite the efforts of police, to this day, 78 years later, the murder of Elizabeth Short is still unsolved. There are several theories as to who could have been her killer. One of these included a doctor due to the injuries that she sustained. Some of them were done with medical precision. However, we don't have confirmation as to who definitely committed the murder. Just a quick warning that if you do go onto Google and start researching more into this case yourself, please be very careful, as real crime scene photos are out there and they are very easy to come across. Please be very careful and wary of that if you do go and do some more research.
If you were to go online and see this YouTuber doing a live stream playing GTA, you would probably think nothing of it. But this popular YouTuber was actually killing his pregnant girlfriend during this live stream. Stephen McCullough was from Ireland, and by all accounts he had a very normal childhood. He was really into Star Wars, Doctor Who, Marvel, like all the things that are in the nerd subculture. In the early 2010s, when YouTube was just becoming a popular thing, Steven started his YouTube channel, Vote Saxon 07, and he actually became quite popular in his niche. He made videos just like on all of his interests, collectibles, reviews, cosplays, gamings, even skits at some points. He gained tens of thousands of subscribers, and a lot of his videos actually performed really well. With his most popular video having him showing his nostalgic Toy Story toys having over 1 million views. He was actually becoming quite successful. He went to Comic-Cons, he interviewed celebrities, he hosted his own podcast, he was even on TV on the show Robot Wars. And his loyal fan base and all of the people in his life really saw Steven as like this goofy, eccentric, outgoing, fun-loving guy. He had this adorable dog named Smokey that he would post about all the time online, pretending to be this great dog dad. But this was all a mask. Steven was actually a loose cannon. He had very severe anger issues, he was very controlling, he was very manipulative, and he was severely jealous. And on top of all of that, he was also abusive. He got so angry once that he took out his anger on his innocent dog Smokey by nearly drowning Smokey in a hot tub. So yeah, he's a total piece of shit. For nearly a decade, Steven was on again, off again with his girlfriend. They were even engaged at one point, but the relationship was so toxic because of Steven. He had all of these issues because he was controlling, he was manipulative, he was jealous. He would always go through her phone and get mad about the things that she was doing when they were broken up. And he was physically abusive. And again, like I said, for nearly a decade, this relationship went on until July 2022, when the relationship finally ended. Only 2 weeks after his 10-year-long relationship ended, Steven was on Bumble, ready to get back into the dating world, where he met 31-year-old Natalie McNally. Natalie came from a very close family. She had great friends. She had a dog named River that she loved. That was her baby. She absolutely loved animals. She was an animal activist and a volunteer. And when she met Steven on this dating app, she thought that they were very compatible. They had a lot of things in common because he was pretending to be this great guy and this great dog dad. They met and started going on dates. They were really hitting it off, but it was still pretty casual. But then, after only knowing each other for 2 months, Natalie found out that she was pregnant. She was really worried to let Steven know, but when she did, he was actually so happy. And Natalie's own family said that this was the happiest they had ever seen her being pregnant and excited to bring her child into the world. So Steven and Natalie get into a more serious relationship now that they're expecting a child, and this is when Steven shows his true colors. He's controlling, he's cold, he's cruel, and they're fighting all of the time. So Natalie reaches out to an old boyfriend that she's still close friends with just because she feels like she needs to vent. Natalie tells her ex-boyfriend that she thinks she made a huge mistake getting into this serious relationship with Steven, and she's actually thinking about breaking up with him. And she thinks that she's going to break up with him after Christmas. But she never got that chance. And apparently her ex-boyfriend even said that he wanted her back and he was willing to support her and her baby. But Steven is used to going through his girlfriend's phones. He goes through Natalie's phone and he sees all these text messages and he's furious. And he wants to kill his pregnant girlfriend, Natalie. This wasn't something that Steven decided to do in the heat of the moment. This was something that he meticulously planned. And he thought that he planned the perfect murder. And he actually planned to be live streaming during Natalie's murder so that he would have the perfect alibi. He found out that you can pre-record a video and then use a third-party website and then upload it to YouTube, but it looks like you're live streaming. So he recorded himself playing Grand Theft Auto for 6 hours pretending that he was live streaming when he wasn't. This is a fake live stream. He recorded this for 6 hours pretending to be live. He keeps talking about how he's live.
Hey, and we're live. Hello, everyone. Yeah, a little bit out of the blue, this, isn't it? A little bit better framed, but that's the fun of being live. Yes, so hello to all in this glorious Sunday evening. Yeah, so I just thought, why not? I'm gonna do a live stream because this day next week is Christmas. So what more could you want for Christmas other than an evening with your old pal Steven?
And then 4 days after he recorded this, he uploads it through this third-party website and it looks like he's streaming on YouTube. So anyone that goes on, it says Vote Saxon 07 is live right now, but it's all fake. It's fake. And then on December 18th, 2022, Natalie was out hanging out with her family. But then a little bit before 6 p.m., as she was on her way home, she gets a text from her boyfriend Steven letting her know that he's about to start live streaming and he's going to be streaming for the rest of the night. And she replied back that she would pop in and watch him when she got home. And when Natalie does get home, she pulls up YouTube and she starts watching her boyfriend live streaming, but it's all fake. And Steven was actually on his way over to her home at that exact moment. Steven was wearing an entire disguise. He had this big coat, he had a wig, he had a mask, he was wearing 2 pairs of gloves. He took a bus to her home and paid in cash so he couldn't be traced. And then he broke into her home and killed her while she was watching her boyfriend live, and that must have been so confusing for Natalie. And inside, Steven beat Natalie, he stabbed her in the neck 3 times, and then he strangled her to death. They have only known each other for 4 months. And he has now killed his pregnant girlfriend and his unborn child. He then changed into a new pair of clothes that he brought with him and he started to walk home. He planned to take a late train home so that CCTV could not follow him all the way back from her house to his house, but he actually missed the last train and the last bus of the night. He was forced to take a taxi home. His plan was to have this taxi drop him off a little far away from his home and then he could walk home so that it couldn't be tracked to him. But once he was in the taxi, he realized that he was low on money. So he actually had to have this taxi drop him off right outside of his home so he could run in and get more money to pay the taxi driver. So this was definitely a bit of a setback. This was not a part of his plan, but he was still convinced that he had planned the perfect murder. Next day, Steven texted Natalie's phone over and over again, pretending to be a worried boyfriend scared that he hadn't heard from his pregnant girlfriend all day. And then at 10 p.m., he went over to her home to discover her body. He then called the emergency number and police were there within minutes. With most cases, people look at the boyfriend or the husband first, so they asked Steven what he was doing at the time that Natalie was murdered, and he pulled up his live stream showing that he had this perfect alibi, and the police actually believed him at first. And Natalie's poor dog River, that was her loyal best friend, had to sadly watch Natalie be killed. And not only that, River was left without going to the bathroom, eating, or having water for over 24 hours. And this poor dog River was absolutely terrified when police and all these people walked in and they opened the door. River ran out of the house and was actually hit by a car. Luckily, River did survive and River is with Natalie's parents. And police were able to track Natalie's killer through CCTV all the way from her home to the taxi that dropped him right back off at Steven's home. A month after he killed his pregnant girlfriend and unborn child, child, he was arrested. And after they seized all of his electronics, they discovered that this live stream was fake the entire time. And that's just so insane to think about. Could you imagine your favorite YouTuber and you go on to watch this live stream in real time, or so you think, just to find out that it's a fake live stream and your favorite YouTuber was actually killing his pregnant girlfriend at the time that you were watching this fake live stream? His trial began in February of 2026, so not that long ago, and he proclaimed his innocence the entire time. And then on May 21st, 2026, again not that long ago, he was found guilty, and this had a mandatory life sentence. But they're still currently in the process to decide if or when he will be eligible for parole. There is actually a hearing to decide tomorrow, June 3rd, 2026, to see if he will be eligible for parole or not, and how long until he will be eligible for parole. This case is so absolutely devastating. I feel so bad for Natalie, who was so happy to be a mom, and her life and her baby's life was stolen by this evil person. And my heart completely goes out to everyone that knew and loved Natalie in real life, especially her parents that lost a daughter and a grandchild all at once. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. Please always remember to be respectful, and I'll see you guys all next time in my next video.
Y'all canceled Diddy, but now you're defending a girl who cornered people in a hotel room and committed acts that genuinely traumatized them. And then excusing it by saying, I'm too old for this type of drama, is exactly how people like her get away with it. Ashley Barnes is a minor. She's only 17 with millions of followers on TikTok. On July 7, 2025, she invites a whole bunch of people over to this hotel room. They're all minors with a big following, and at first they're like, okay, cool, we're gonna hang out, make some content, but then it turns weird fast. There's a drawer in that room filled with substances and toys and inappropriate things that you would only bring out in a private mutual setting. But Ashley has it ready like a party favor basket. She starts pouring drinks and offering them these substances, and obviously these kids are saying no, but instead of moving on, she starts pressuring them. Ashley is getting in their faces, forcing them to take these things and making them play truth or dare, but not the fun type, more like the inappropriate adult version. And at this point, it was just turning into aggressive manipulation. These dares start making everyone feel very uncomfortable because she's making people kiss. She's trying to force her roommates to make out with her, not just once, but multiple times. And then Brad, poor Brad, he literally pretends to sleep just to escape from the situation. Like, that's the only way to not be involved. But while he's lying there, she gets closer and starts touching herself right near him. She's asking these really uncomfortable questions like, do I need to lose weight or do I need bigger? You get the idea. And then she turns to Capri, knowing full well that he has a girlfriend, but she does not care. Ashley is pushing herself onto him and touching him very inappropriately, trying to get him to take all this stuff so maybe he'll fold, but he keeps saying no over and over again. He even tries calling Piper, his girlfriend, who is also a minor, for some help, but unfortunately she was sleeping at the time and she had no idea that any of this was happening. But then Lucia, another minor, had later came out and said that Ashley had assaulted her at a party as well. So now it's not just one incident, it's not just one person saying this, it is multiple people with the same pattern and the same violations. But Ashley's family is not taking accountability. There are leaked messages with Ashley's father defending her, saying that she didn't do any of this. Mind you, there is video evidence of all of this stuff happening in the hotel room, but still, like, are you serious? People were scared, they were texting for help, they were trying to leave, and her own father is over here saying it's all a misunderstanding. Y'all need to treat the situation just as serious as you did the Diddy one, because it doesn't matter if she's young-minded or has a whole bunch of followers. That's not okay. I just hope everyone in that room is okay, and everyone affected by this in general. I hope that they can heal, and I really hope that the truth is not ignored just because a family doesn't believe it.
This is the case of the Lobster Boy murders. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is Grady Franklin Stiles Jr. Grady was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in June of 1937. He inherited electrodactyly from his father, which for Grady resulted in his hands appearing claw-like, and he also had shorter legs. His legs stopped just below the knee. His father, who again had the same condition, decided that he wasn't going to let this hold him back. He found work as a performer within a travelling circus, and people would come from far and wide to see his lobster claws. Grady would be brought into the spotlight of the circus when he was only 7 years old, performing as Lobster Boy, and the family done really well for themselves. They could earn up to $80,000 per season. While working, Grady would meet 19-year-old Mary Teresa, who had run away to join the circus. She didn't have an act, she wasn't a performer, but she did work within the circus. The two would fall in love and eventually get married before going on to have 3 children. They had their daughter Kathleen, Kathy, and their son Grady III, both of which inherited electrodactyly, and they had their daughter Donna, who didn't. Initially, Mary would describe Grady as a loving family man. However, after he had a drink, he would drastically change. Grady would drink whiskey by the bottle and was incredibly abusive towards Mary and the girls. Having his shorter legs when he wasn't in a wheelchair, he would use his arms to sort of walk and support himself, and because when he did that, he was carrying his entire body weight, that made him incredibly strong, and he would use his hands as weapons. He would strangle Mary, poking her in the eyes and nipping her, and even rape. On one occasion in 1973, Grady literally reached up inside of her uterus and pulled out her copper coil. It was then that Mary decided that enough was enough. She was not going to put up with this anymore, and so she left Grady, divorcing him. I believe that at around this time he had also developed a reputation and he wasn't very well liked within the community, and so he wasn't performing within the circus anymore either. In 1978, 15-year-old Donna would introduce Grady to her new boyfriend, 18-year-old Jack Lane, and immediately Grady did not like him and he forbade this relationship. He refused to bless their marriage. He wanted to maintain control over Donna, who felt trapped within the family. She desperately wanted to get away, and so because of this, she didn't listen to her father, and she and Jack intended to marry anyway. It would be the night before the wedding that Grady would shoot Jack Lane twice, once in the chest and once in his back as he tried to run away. He would later die in the hospital, and some reports state that he died in Donna's arms. When arrested, Grady would admit to shooting and killing Jack. However, he said that it wasn't murder. He did this in order to protect his daughter Donna. He would go on to be convicted of third-degree murder. However, he was deemed unfit for prison due to his condition, along with other health-related conditions that he had, including a failing liver. It was determined that no prisons could accommodate for all of his additional needs. And so, much to the anger and the fury of the public, Grady was put on house arrest with a sentence of 15 years, forced to stay inside where he would violently abuse his family, and receiving this sentence, being deemed unfit to go to prison, made Grady feel invincible. He thought that he could do anything he wanted and that he was above the law, which was a very dangerous mindset for him to have. He and Mary reconciled and they remarried in 1989, and at this point in time they were living in Florida. Whatever lies of change or promise of a happy life quickly went out of the window, because if anything, Grady's anger, abuse and violence only worsened. He would take his abuse that extra mile. On one occasion, Mary would be awoken with a pillow over her face where Grady was attempting to smother her. On a different occasion, this was in Thanksgiving of 1992, with whiskey thick on his breath, Mary would be awoken with Grady Stiles holding a butcher's knife to her neck, telling her, quote, "One of these days I'm going to kill you and your family, but the time isn't right," before he dropped the knife and then crawled away, leaving Mary terrified. Feeling trapped and like she couldn't escape her husband, Mary quickly came up with a plan to murder him. She would give her son from a previous relationship, Harry Newman, $1,500 to go out and find someone who would murder Grady for her. They would plan it, they just needed someone else to execute it. Harry would enlist the help of neighbour Christopher Wyant, and he agreed to the plan. On the 29th of November 1992, Christopher would sneak into the Stiles family trailer. He creeped up behind 55-year-old Grady, who was sat watching the TV, before pointing a gun to the back of his head and shooting him twice at point blank range, killing him instantly. Mary, Harry and Christopher would all be quickly identified as being involved with this murder, and neither of them denied their part in it. During her trial, Mary spoke openly and in detail about the sheer amount of abuse that Grady had subjected her to throughout her almost entire life, and she tearfully told the judge, quote, "My husband was going to kill my family. I believe that from the bottom of my heart. I'm so sorry this happened, but my family is safe now. At least I know they're alive, and I thank God for that." She would be convicted of manslaughter and conspiracy and received a 12-year sentence. Harry, who refused to take a plea deal, would be convicted of murder and was handed life with a minimum of 25 years. and Christopher would also be convicted of murder, handed life with a minimum of 27 years.
Seeing this on my newsfeed made me absolutely sick to my stomach, and it's even worse than you first thought. So on the 28th of May, a bunch of students were at this theme park in Texas, enjoying the sun, enjoying the rides. It's called the Pleasure Pier in Galveston, and essentially there's like loads of smaller rides, and one of the main attractions there is a bigger roller coaster called the Iron Shark. But as a load of students started making their way up the track on this roller coaster, it suddenly failed. Something to do with a sensor, and it just came to an abrupt stop. In this position, like, can you imagine? I don't think there's any worse position to be stuck in. It was at the peak of an almost vertical drop. So they had to get emergency services over there straight away with a crane to crane people out of the ride one by one. Some of them were sat dangling for hours. I can't imagine anything more terrifying. Thankfully, they rescued everybody without injuries, but you'd think with all of this attention on this particular theme park, there wouldn't be any more ride faults, right? Well, another ride at the park called the Texas Flyer, which is next to the Iron Shark, is basically like a giant swing ride. It's very high. It's like 230 feet in the air, and it spins you round and round, and if you're not vomiting because of the height, you can probably enjoy like quite a nice view. Just days after the Iron Shark fault, that ride came to a halt mid-air. They started announcing over the tannoy, "Attention riders, at this time we are experiencing minor technical difficulties. Please remain seated in an upright position until the ride is fully on the ground." I would have just fainted right there and then. Again, thankfully everybody did manage to get off the ride without any injuries, but like, if I didn't have trust issues with roller coasters before, I certainly do now. Really reminds me of the absolutely horrific Smiler incident at Alton Towers. I actually did a deep dive of that over on my podcast, The Born Investigation. Go and check it out. That was a wild case.
He thought that it was some sort of sick and twisted Halloween prank, but it wasn't. His entire family had been barbarically massacred. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the case of the Lisk family murders. Growing up, William Lisk was always considered to have been a problem child. He had issues with his attitude and his behaviour. Throughout his entire time in school, he would relentlessly bully his peers. He was always causing arguments and picking fights with everyone, and in general, he was considered a very naughty child. His father, who was also named William but went by Bill, tried to be there for his son. He was very patient, and he just hoped that William's behaviour was the result of him being a very immature child, and as he would grow up, he would grow out of it. However, that didn't happen. As he got older, William only got worse. In 2001, after meeting while at work, Billy Lisk would marry a woman named Susan, and she came with her two sons, Derek and Devon. From the outside, they appeared to be a very normal, functioning, happy family. They went to church on Sundays, where Devon sang in the choir, and they loved to spend lots of time outdoors. The family lived in a pretty secluded area of Ohio on a big plot of land, and so they would spend a lot of their time on the land, going out for walks and fishing, and the boys enjoyed hunting. William, however, hated his new extended family. He absolutely despised Susan. He refused to listen to her. He refused to follow any of our rules, and he hated his two new brothers, even though none of them had done anything wrong. Whenever William was around, there would always be just an atmosphere. You could cut the tension with a knife. He was moody, he was miserable, and he was always just trying to stir the pot and cause arguments around him. Due to his argumentative and violent tendencies, Susan, Derek, and Devon were all terrified of William. Susan especially. On one occasion during an argument, William would physically punch Susan. He was arrested for this, but then only 2 months later, he smashed a cup over her head. After this, she tried to press charges against William. However, after a mental health evaluation, it was determined that he wasn't fit to stand trial. This came after he was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. Following this diagnosis, Bill really tried his best to get William the help that he needed. He would spend many years going in and out of mental health facilities. While he was in the facilities and he was taking his medication and going to therapy and was surrounded by other people who were trying to better themselves, William would do brilliantly. However, when he left the mental health facilities, he would go back to abusing alcohol, abusing drugs, being violent and argumentative. It was just like a very vicious cycle. One of the therapists within the mental health facility would say that William Lisk was a danger to himself himself and people around him, describing him as a very dangerous young man. In late 2004, while Susan was having a shower, she would get the fright of her life when William broke into the bathroom and attempted to attack her while she is in the shower. And for Susan, this was the last straw. She was not going to put up with this any longer, and Bill was equally furious with his son and was left with no other option but to kick him out. Bill wasn't ready to give up on his son, however. He really wanted to see William thrive and do well, while also protecting Susan, Derek and Devon. He couldn't have William living with them, and so he placed William into a halfway house nearby. This meant that Bill was still able to go and visit him. Bill would often take William to a cabin that the family owned around about 100 miles away. He would go up to this cabin for weekends at a time, where they would spend some one-on-one time together, talking, bonding, hunting, and in general just spending some quality time together, which Bill absolutely loved. And that is exactly what they were doing the weekend before Halloween in 2001. As the men were talking, Bill was really impressed with what he was hearing. It sounded like William was ready to turn over a new leaf and was really going to try and implement positive changes into his life. When they got back to the house, he was invited inside, and things went so well that Susan and Bill decided to invite William for a sleepover, which is something that never happened. The next morning, on the 31st of October, 16-year-old Devon would arrive at the family home at around about 9:30 a.m. He had spent the night before sleeping at his biological father's house. When he arrived at the home, he raced inside and ran up to his bedroom to quickly get changed. He was going to be singing in the choir that day, and he was running a little bit behind. After shoving his clothes on, he ran downstairs, where he bumped into William in the kitchen, which was strange. Again, William wasn't usually allowed at the house, and especially not by himself, and Bill was nowhere to be seen. Something just seemed off. William spoke to Devon and seemed very interested in asking him where he had been, where he was going, what he was going to do, when he was coming back home. And William actually seemed in a good mood, which was completely out of the ordinary. Devon quickly answered William before bolting out of the door, making it to church to sing in the choir. He would arrive back at the family home hours later, and like a typical 16-year-old boy, the first thing he did was run back up to his bedroom, shove on a headset, pick up his games controller, and sat gaming for the entire afternoon. Hours later, when he went downstairs to get a drink, he noticed that the house was eerily quiet, and in this moment he had the realisation that he hadn't seen Susan or anyone since he had came in. Devon would go up to Susan in Bill's bedroom and was shocked to see his mother and Bill still lay asleep in their bed. He tiptoed up beside his mother, who was completely covered in a duvet, and started to poke her and shake her and calling out to her to try and wake her up, but he got no response. He would then lift up the duvet and saw the most traumatizing scene. There was his mother, Susan, lay motionless on a blood-soaked pillow. For a split second, his brain was trying to reason what he was seeing and thought this must be some sort of sick and twisted Halloween prank, but it wasn't. His mother was not moving. Devon screamed, turning on his heels and running out of the house, calling his auntie, who then contacted 911. When the officers arrived, they would discover the bodies of Susan and Bill lay on a blood-soaked bed. Bill had been shot in the face 5 times, and he was still lay in the position that he would have been laying in as he was sleeping. Susan had been shot 3 times in the head, and forensics later determined that she had been indecently assaulted after her murder. When the officers went to check in on Derek in his bedroom, they would find him in his bed, lay in the fetal position, having sustained extensive blunt force injuries to his skull. Nearby, they found a bloody claw hammer. The time of death for the family was placed at around about 6:30 a.m. William had spent the night at the house and awoken before everyone else. He then went from room to room, killing each of them as they lay defenseless in their sleep. Then, just a couple of hours later, Devon returned home, having no idea that the dead bodies of his family were in the house the entire time. The family's car was missing, and William Lisk was of course police's #1 suspect. It didn't take them long to find him, however. He had made his way to the family cabin around about 100 miles away. He was arrested and went on to make a full confession in exchange for not receiving the death penalty. At age 24, he would be handed a sentence of 3 life terms without the possibility of parole, and it was said that during his sentencing, William seemed upset and remorseful, blaming his actions on his mental health. Only 5 years into his sentence, William Lisk would be found dead in his cell by a self-inflicted injury.
This woman spent 7 hours stealing from Target, but at that point, you should have just clocked in and asked for an employee discount. Her name's Alvani. Well, I don't know if that's her real name, but she's from India. And one day, she rose up to her local Target like it's just a regular afternoon. Except she's not there to shop, she's there to steal a lot, apparently. At first, everything's fine. She's playing it cool, walking slow, really blending into the crowd. She's picking things up, putting it back, checking her phone, acting real casual, but what she doesn't realize is that the employees are already clocking her. She had been there for 7 hours. I love Target, but damn. Like literally some of the workers are over here whispering, wait, wasn't she here at the start of my shift? But Alvani, she thinks that she's being so slick, so she keeps filling up her cart. And at some point, she just keeps tossing things in like electronics, clothes, skincare, snacks, like she's shopping for the end of the world. And by the time she's done, it's over $1,300 worth of stuff. She gets ready to leave, pushes the cart up to the door like nothing happened. And before she walks out, this part killed me. She literally pauses and makes sure that the alarms won't go off. Like she stands there, looks at the doors, watches other people go by, and waits to see if it beeps. It doesn't, so now she's like, bet. It's my time now. She pushes the cart through the first set of doors, and before she can even touch the second, a Target employee steps in and he's like, yeah, no. He snatches the cart out of her hand, escorts her to the back, and calls the police. And now she's panicking. She starts begging the co-workers, I'll pay. I wasn't gonna steal it. I swear I was gonna check out. You were literally outside the doors. It's a little too late for that. And when the cops pull up, she starts spiraling. Now she's telling them that she didn't do anything, that she never tried to leave, she wasn't planning on stealing, and that she's not from this country and didn't know the rule. And one of the female officers looks at her and she goes, are you allowed to steal in India? Didn't think so. Clock it. Thank you very much. But they literally had the entire thing on surveillance, front to back. And so they arrest her and now she's facing felony charges. Listen, if you're gonna steal for 7 hours, you might as well do it somewhere that has no cameras. Not Target, not Costco, not Walmart. Those stores have cameras in every single inch of the ceiling. Actually, scratch that. Just don't steal at all.
Is Brian Laundrie still alive, and are his parents helping him hide? Look, here's the thing. Well, first of all, the important person in this case is not Brian. Want to make that clear. The important person is Gabby Petito. Brian and Gabby were in a relationship. They went on a cross-country road trip in 2021. Brian returns home without Gabby. Gabby's missing. He goes missing. Gabby's remains are then found. And a month after Brian disappears, his remains are also found with a letter confessing to ending Gabby's life. I made a video about this entire case. I'll put the date when I posted it on the screen so you guys can go see it if you want to go back and watch that for some context. However, many people have started asking questions about the circumstances regarding Brian, his parents, his family, and his passing. And I want to talk about that because I want to know what you guys think. Because honestly, I just like, this keeps me up at night and I think about it over and over again. And I want to just kind of sort of talk out loud and see what you guys think. So this is me just kind of thinking out loud a little bit. But let's run through the timeline. August 27th is the last time that Gabby Petito is seen alive. September 1st, Brian goes home to Florida on his own. September 6th to September 8th, he goes camping with his entire family in the middle of nowhere. By this point, Gabby's family has started to grow worried because they haven't heard from her and she's supposed to be with Brian in Wyoming, but nobody apart from Brian's family is aware that Brian is alone back in Florida. September 11th, Gabby Petito is officially reported missing. That same night, authorities go to the Laundrie's home. They see Gabby's van parked there. His parents open the door. They say that Brian is home. He has been home, but he doesn't want to talk to anyone. No officers set their own 2 eyes on Brian to confirm that he was home. Also, quick question. Why did Brian come home, go camping with his entire family when he knew that Gabby was missing, before the public realized that Gabby was missing, and before her parents called to officially report her a missing person? What were they doing? Well, according to Roberta, Brian's mom, it's just a trip they had planned and they wanted to go, so they went. 6 days later, September 17th, Brian Laundrie is reported missing by his parents. 2 days after he goes missing, Gabby Petito's remains are found. So she is not officially reported missing until September, but she's last seen August 27th, which is the same day officers believe that she lost her life. August 29th, before Brian returned home without Gabby, he makes a phone call home to his parents. He talks to his mother, Roberta, and he speaks to her for 55 minutes. And according to her, Brian tells her that he needs a lawyer, he needs help, and that Gabby is gone. Roberta says that she has no clue what he meant when he said Gabby is gone. She had no clue if they broke up, if she just left, if she returned home. She doesn't know. Brian only says that Gabby is gone, and that's it. However, almost immediately after that phone call, his father calls an attorney and then wires the attorney $25,000
And right after, Roberta then sends an email to Brian about how to get stains out of t-shirts. That same night the phone call happened is when she sends him that email with a link, and when she's later asked about it, she says that it was just an inside joke. And if we're going with their recollection of events, Brian then comes home, they go camping, but apparently they do not talk about Gabby. His parents apparently do not ask any questions. He told them that she was gone, and that was that. They just had no further questions. They don't know anything. She's just gone. They don't know what it means, but that's all that Brian said. And something about Roberta is that she is obsessed with her son. You know those moms that are so obsessed with their sons that they almost get jealous of the girlfriend because they love their son so much? That is Roberta. And you're telling me that she got a frantic phone call from her son saying, I need help, I need a lawyer, Gabby is gone, and she didn't ask any more questions and she doesn't remember anything else. And then you saw him at a camping trip, still didn't ask any questions for 2 days straight when you were together the entire time? Be so for real. Also later on, all the text messages between Roberta and Brian disappear. According to her, she got a new phone for him. She texted this new phone, which made all of their messages on his old phone disappear. Gone. Poof. Nowhere to be found. That does not happen. When his parents reported Brian missing, they were claiming that they had not seen him in 3 days. Okay, so their entire house, outside of their house, their entire neighborhood was covered with news reporters, law enforcement officials, random people. The entire street was flooded with people. People had eyes on that house 24/7. How does Brian manage to leave his house and disappear without a single person seeing him? The story that his parents told police was that he left, he went on a hike and never came back. They hadn't reported him missing earlier because they just thought that he was off on a hike, reconnecting with nature, I guess, in the Carlton Reserve in Sarasota County. And then a massive manhunt begins to find Brian Laundrie in the Carlton Reserve. At that time, 75% of the reserve was flooded with water. Law enforcement is searching through swamps, through mud, pushing through snakes in the water, fighting off alligators. They have people on foot with cadaver dogs, people on boats, little boats, big boats, people on horses, in ATVs, drones, K9 units, divers. This search was costing them $1.5 million, all dedicated to finding Brian Laundrie, but they just could not find him. At the same time, officers are back at the Laundrie house searching his house, and in his bedroom they find a letter, a handwritten letter written by Roberta Laundrie to her son Brian. The letter was in an envelope that said, quote, Brian Christopher Laundrie, burn after reading, end quote. They open the letter and it reads, quote, I just want you to remember that I will always love you, and I know you will always love me. You are my boy. Nothing can make me stop loving you. Nothing will or could ever divide us, no matter what we do or where we go or what we say. We will always love each other. If you're in jail, I will bake a cake with a file in it. If you need to dispose of a body, I will show up with a shovel and garbage bags. If you fly to the moon, I will be watching the skies for your re-entry. If you say you hate my guts, I will get new guts. Nothing can separate us, not hatred, not hunger, not homelessness, not threats, not even sin, not the thinkable or unthinkable can get between us, not time, not miles and miles and miles. This woman is obsessed with her son. If you hate my guts, I will get new guts. Who even writes like that? My brain would never come up with a sentence like that. What? Second of all, though, my point being is that you're telling me that this woman that is obsessed with her son let him out of her sight in the most troubling time of his life. You're telling me that a woman that is that in love with her son just let him wander off and then didn't wonder about his whereabouts for days, didn't report him missing for days, isn't out looking for him, trying to find him? Gabby Petito's family is tearing the world apart trying to find her because the Laundrie family is being zero help. Yet Roberta Laundrie is just sitting at home on the couch knowing that her son is missing. That makes no sense. The only reason in my head as to why that could maybe make sense, as to why she wouldn't be outside looking for her son, is either because she knew where her son was or she did not want him to be found, or both. Also later on, when she's asked about why she wrote on that envelope, burn after reading, she says that that was an inside joke too. How many inside jokes do you have with your son, and why are they so weird? 2 days into Brian's disappearance, Gabby Petito's body is found in Wyoming. Authorities believe that she had been there since August 27th, and her cause of death was ruled a homicide. The search for Brian continued with no luck until 1 month in, on October 20th of 2021, when his remains were found at the Carlton Reserve by his parents. For 37 days, authorities carried out one of the largest manhunts in recent memory and found nothing. His parents then decided to go look, and they found him within an hour and 20 minutes. And looping back around to the weird camping trip the Laundrie family took when Brian had secretly returned home, people believe that either the family was getting together in an isolated remote area because Brian confessed and they were trying to figure out what the plan was going to be, or because he told them that he had been planning on unaliving himself and that was, I guess, his last way to say goodbye. But who's to say? Brian Brian's remains were found completely decomposed, and it was ruled that he unalived himself using a weapon. But this is the thing about the case that made me go, because Gabby's remains were found in fine condition for how long she was believed to have been outside and for the weather conditions that she was found in. Her body still looked like a body. She was found in a fetal position after over 20 days of being missing. Yet Brian Laundrie was missing for 37 days, and when they found him, all they found were teeth and bones. And my initial reaction was, there's no way, right? However, after looking a little bit more into it, I realized just how different the conditions were in where Brian was found versus Gabby. Because of how his remains were found, it's believed that he had been submerged under the water for weeks. I'm pretty sure the exact area that he was found in had been flooded with 3 feet of water and had just recently started to dry up. And that water was 85 degrees, which would make sense as to how that would affect the decomposition of a human body massively. But still, he was found a mile away from where his vehicle was parked. It's so hard for me to believe that authorities with search efforts that cost them over $1 million would have missed him, yet his parents found him within an hour and 20 minutes. With him, a confession letter of sorts was found where he basically says, yeah, I was the person who ended Gabby's life, but I only did it because she got hurt. I couldn't carry her. She was in pain and I wanted to put her out of her misery. But it's not even up for debate whether that's true or not, because not a single one of Gabby's autopsy results matches up to Brian's version of events, not one. So that entire letter was a slap on the face, really. It also kind of felt like it was just a way for him to get the last word in, which is disgusting. And I'm sure you guys have seen people on the internet all the time talking about Brian Laundrie still being alive and his parents helping him hide out. But it is important to know that DNA did confirm that the remains that were found, which were a lot of bones, including parts of his ribs, pelvis, and his skull, DNA confirmed that those bones and teeth belonged to Brian Laundrie. There is no denying that. DNA is DNA. However, the issue that I have is that I strongly believe that his parents knew what he did. I believe that they knew that he ended Gabby's life. I also believe they knew exactly where he was when he went missing, and they allowed Gabby's family to remain hopeful, knowing that she was never coming back. They allowed that search that cost $1.5 million to happen, knowing where their son was. And I think they knew exactly what was going on at all times. And if someone knowingly hides or withholds information that's important to a criminal investigation, they could be charged with different crimes such as obstruction of justice, accessory to the fact, making false statements, etc., etc. Yet his parents were never charged with any of that. Gabby's parents, rightfully so, did sue Brian's estate, as well as filed a separate lawsuit against Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, alleging emotional distress and that they withheld information. That lawsuit was settled in February of 2024 for an undisclosed amount. However, that was a civil lawsuit, not a criminal lawsuit, which are different things. And I think that his mother should be handed criminal charges, but I don't know. Everything that I said was alleged, solely based on my personal information, using information that public information that I gathered from the internet. Don't come for me. Gabby Petito's family started the Gabby Petito Foundation in her honor. One of the best ways to support the Petito family is by making a donation to that foundation. Their mission is to together make a difference, save lives, reunite families with missing loved ones, and prevent tragedies like Gabby's from happening to anyone else. Let me know what you guys think. This really keeps me up at night. Like, I'll be peacefully sleeping and then I'll be like, what happened? Anyway, hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
This is the story of Romeo Broom. Romeo was born June 4th, 1956 in Muskegon, Michigan. His mother had relocated the family to Cleveland, Ohio when he was just 5 years old. Him being the oldest of 10 children, his parents forced him to drop out so he could help with his younger siblings. His home life was very dysfunctional, with him frequently witnessing his father beat his mother, on top of his parents abusing drugs and alcohol. But outside the chaos at home, they said that Romeo was a very reserved young man who didn't look like he committed the crimes that he committed. His criminal record started when he was just 13 years old, but it was petty crimes, non-violent crimes. But by the mid-70s, that had quickly changed. On October 25th, 1974, Romeo had robbed a man at gunpoint who was just simply sitting in his car minding his business. On January 11th, 1975, a 12-year-old girl was babysitting Romeo's niece. When he seen the young girl, he had lured her to a room alone. That's where he raped her. He was 18 at the time. But just 8 weeks later, on March 15th, he had held a man at gunpoint and took his car. He ended up getting arrested later that same day in that same car. The owner of the car pointed him out in a lineup. The 12-year-old babysitter also pointed him out in a lineup. He pled guilty to rape and robbery and was sentenced to 7 to 25 years, but ended up getting paroled May of 1984. And you would think after almost doing 10 years, you would come out with some act right, but not Romeo, because that same year, September 18th, 1984, a 12-year-old girl was walking home from her cousin's house. Romeo spotted her, rode past her, turned around, and parked. The girl, not paying any attention, walked right past his car. Romeo hopped out the car, grabbed her from behind, and put a knife to her throat. But the girl wasn't no easy catch. She fought. She screamed, and a neighbor heard it. The neighbors, who were a couple, opened their door and shouted at Romeo. This caused the 12-year-old girl to get away. She ran right into their home, and Romeo fled the scene. But just 3 days later, he was successful. 14-year-old Trina Middleton was walking home from a football game with her two friends when Romeo had approached the girls from behind. He had grabbed Trina by her neck and forced her to his car. Now, her friends, they tried to fight him off. They tried to yell and scream, but nobody heard. So they just fled the scene to go get help. They had gave a description of Romeo and the beige car that he was driving. But just 2 hours later, at around 1:30 a.m., Trina was found in Forest Hill Park, which was in East Cleveland. She had been sexually assaulted and stabbed 7 times in the chest. Him getting away only adds fuel to his fire, because on December 6, 1984, an 11-year-old girl named Melinda was walking home from the corner store with her sister. Romeo trailed the girls. When they turned the corner, he exited his vehicle. He had approached Melinda from behind and grabbed her by the neck, forcing her into his car. But what he didn't know was the girls were practically at home. They lived literally right there. So her sister ran screaming for their mother, and her mother heard her child screaming. She immediately ran outside. Romeo ain't even peeled off yet. The mother grabbed his car and held on. As he sped off, he's trying to swerve to get the mother off the car. As all this is going on, 11-year-old Melinda unlocked the door and escaped. He had no choice but to keep going, but a bystander memorized his license plate. And just a few hours later, Romeo was in custody. The 1973 beige Buick belonged to his father, and he admitted to driving it. 11-year-old Melinda and her mother positively identified Romeo in a police lineup. 14-year-old Trina Middleton's two friends also identified him in a police lineup. This is Trina, a picture of Trina right here. And the 12-year-old that got away, that ran into the neighbor's house, also identified him in a police lineup. Romeo was charged with rape, kidnapping, and felony murder. He had pled not guilty, and his trial had started in September of 1985. He was found guilty of all counts and sentenced to death. Now, while on death row, he maintained his innocence. Now, this happened in 1985. As the years are going by, he is trying to appeal his case. He had even said, I will submit my DNA just to prove my innocence, because, DNA testing was elevating during that time. So he figured, hey, I don't got nothing to lose. Go ahead and take my DNA. And they did that. And it came back a match. Just like majority of death row inmates, Romeo waited damn near 20 years until his death date. September 15th, 2009, he walked the Green Mile to his death chamber. They strapped him down to the gurney, blindfolded him, and prepared to inject 3 drugs that was meant to kill him in 7 minutes. But the executioner could not find a good vein. They had poked Romeo 18 times in his arms and in his legs. When they finally found a good vein, which was 2 hours later, the vein disappeared. So they called his execution off. This man walked back to his cell. As you can see, all the pokes in his skin. But soon as he got back in the cell, he said, "Let me call my lawyer." His lawyer filed a petition saying that a second execution would violate the double jeopardy law. But the Supreme Court said, "Fuck out of here. Your next execution date is June 2020. But what happened in 2020? The motherfucking pandemic. His second execution was rescheduled for 2022, but he still would not make it to that because on December 28th, 2020, Romeo Broom died from COVID. He was 64 years old, which means y'all didn't even have to schedule the second execution. I'm not understanding why y'all let this man walk back to his cell. It was other ways to do this. Y'all let him walk back to his cell and live 11 more years and still didn't make it to the next execution. I just can't. I am at a loss for words with this. I don't know. I don't know. What y'all think, Yellow Tape? This is the story of Lemuel Smith. Stormville, New York, 1981 was the first year Greenhaven Correctional Facility was allowing women to work at an all-male maximum security prison. 31-year-old Donna Payan, who has 3 children and a husband who was already a correctional officer at Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, which is where she wanted to be placed because it was closer to her home, but she was placed in Greenhaven. She trained in Albany, New York at Correctional Services Training Academy for 3 weeks, which means she had to be away from her family. And one night during training, one of her fellow trainees entered her room asking for sexual favors. She filed a sexual harassment charge against him, but later dropped it. She was assigned to Greenhaven on April 16, 1981, and she immediately put in a transfer to be at Clinton Correctional Facility with her husband. But just 1 month later, on May 15th, she went missing. On May 15th, Donna clocked into her regular shift, which was 1 p.m. to 9. About an hour into her shift, her and 2 other coworkers were just talking when the phone rang. The guy coworker answered the phone, and it was for Donna. He gave the phone to Donna. Now, when Donna answered this phone, she kind of turned her back towards her coworkers so they wouldn't hear what she was saying. When she hung up the phone, she seemed like she was angry. Donna told her 2 coworkers, "I have to handle something. I'll be back." About 5 hours passed and it was roll call for the officers, but Donna was not in attendance. Now, this is a maximum security prison. I don't know how they did it in the early 80s, but I'm pretty sure they know who's leaving the building and who's coming in the building. And they didn't never see Donna leave the building. So the whole prison has to go on lockdown. They're checking each and every cell, each and every room. No sign of Donna. The only other way out of here is through the trash. And their trash bins are huge to the point where every day a garbage truck has to come and get the prison trash. When the garbage truck came to get the trash, the guard had to sit there and watch the trash get dumped into the truck just to make sure nothing was in the trash. And they didn't see anything, so they let the trash truck go. The prison's trash gets taken to a landfill about 20 miles away from the prison. It wasn't until the next day, which was Saturday, May 16th, around 10:30 a.m., a landfill employee was driving on a bulldozer and seen a leg sticking out from a green plastic bag. It was 31-year-old Donna Payant. She was still in uniform. Her hands were tied around her back. It was rope around her neck. She had died of strangulation. She was sexually abused. She was ran over by one of the bulldozers, so every bone in her body was broke. But how the hell does something like this happen in a maximum security prison without nobody seeing? The guards were the prime suspect. 3 days before Donna's murder, she was seen in a heated discussion with one of the male guards, to the point where at the end of the argument, he kind of shoved Donna, but nobody knew what the argument was about. See, at the time of Donna's death, Greenhaven was under investigation. Fresh charges just 2 weeks before her death. Greenhaven was getting looked into about the guards. The guards would make a deal with the inmates, sell cocaine to the inmates. They would even bring prostitutes to the inmates. And Donna and some of the other women correctional officers wasn't with that. They wasn't with that crooked shit. And Donna had already had them sexual harassment charges against another fellow employee, but then she dropped it. But they still looking at her like a snitch. On Donna's body was a deep impression that looked like a bite mark. To make sure, they sent it to a forensic specialist named Dr. Levine. Now, Levine said this is indeed a bite mark, but it's not only a bite mark. I just seen this bite mark 3 days ago.
Wait a minute, I just saw this 2 or 3 days ago in a lecture that I had given on a case that I had seen 4 years ago in Schenectady, New York.
The case was of 30-year-old Merle Wilson, who was strangled, sexually assaulted, and bitten. I didn't want to show the picture on here, but she was bitten like right here. The picture was crazy. But Dr. Levine said, is Merle Wilson's killer in Greenhaven? And the answer was yes. 39-year-old Lemuel Smith had confessed to the murder of Merle Wilson and another woman. Both women were killed exactly like Donna. He confessed to these murders in 1977. It is now 1981. So 4 years he has been a model prisoner. He had found religion, working in the chapel. He had worked his way up to be an assistant to the chaplain, which means he had more access around that prison than majority of the prisoners. He had access to offices. He had access to phones. When they looked through his file, he had told his psychiatrist, y'all better not let me out of here because I'm going to kill again. I can't help myself. Those were his words. He was diagnosed with bipolar schizophrenic, and it was evidence that the two conversed here and there. Lemuel was known for making handmade boxes, little trinkets, and Donna wanted a jewelry box made. So the theory is that he's the one that called her on the phone that afternoon, saying he made her a gift or whatever it is to lure her in that chaplain office, because Donna's hair was found in the office. Now, the office looked like it was just recently cleaned up, but her hair was found in the corner of that office. The bite marks on Merle Wilson and Donna Payant is an exact match of Lemuel's bite, but he said he didn't do it. He did not do it. He said that the correctional officers framed him.
The woman was beaten. The woman was supposed to have been sodomized, right? Now this is right in a busy quarter, this officer had sodomized. Then she was tied up. Then she was put in garbage bags, right? And then she was supposed to be put in the garbage can, right? Now, I know you've never tried to lift a dead body, but it's twice as much as human weight, right? As live weight. It's impossible. It can't be done.
Lemuel confessed to 5 murders before this happened. The murder of Merle Wilson is what got him life without the possibility of parole. He has been in and out of prison literally all his life. I just think it's more than 5 people, because every time he had got paroled, he was into something. But Donna's sister is on Lemuel's side. She don't think that he killed her either. She was also thinking it was one of the correctional officers. But with the charge of Donna's death, Lemuel was sentenced to death in 1983, but it quickly got commuted in 1984. So he's back on life without parole, but he has been in solitary confinement for over 40 years for this death. Last year, Donna's son, whose name is Chris Payant, is trying to reopen his mother's case because he too think that it was one of the correctional officers. He said, yes, I know Lemuel is a bad man, but I don't think he killed my mother. Lemuel Smith is 82 years old. He is in a wheelchair, and he is still saying he did not kill Donna Payant. What do y'all think? The bite marks, but then Lemuel said, nah, them was altered.
See that there's a match. You're just saying that the match is fabricated.
I can see it. Anybody can see it. But it's not a bite mark. Here's about it. Been put in a compactor, crushed. And all they see. But the only thing clear and distinct on it is the bite mark. Come on, it has to be distorted. Unless it gave afterwards.
Was they doing that much altering back in 1981? This case, I don't know, Yellow Tape. What do y'all think?